As I walked around my newly purchased house, I could feel the stories that had been carried through time, the dusty imprints of memories both joyous and sorrowful, of loved ones who had laughed in the gardens and shed tears in its shadows. I felt the presence of ghosts in the silence that seemed to echo louder than any noise, as if the house was holding its breath in anticipation of the future that was to come. The paint was peeling off the walls, and the wood was rotting away in places, but the house was still firmly grounded, its sturdy frame standing strong in spite of the years. I could feel its spirit in the dents of the floorboards, in the creaking of the stairs, in the way the sun rays caught the dust mites and highlighted the forgotten corners of the house. The walls were thick and solid, and I could almost feel the conversations of the past pressing up against them. I could almost hear the laughter and the fights, the secrets and the sorrows, and I was suddenly filled with a strange sense of dread and hope all at once. I knew that I couldn't escape the house's history, and I wondered what secrets I would uncover as I set out on my journey to make this house my home. The house came with a sprawling basement, something that I initially found charming. The realtor warned me it had a bit of a moisture problem, but that didn't deter me. As I descended the creaking wooden stairs, my flashlight beam danced across the rough stone walls, highlighting mossy patches and small areas of moisture trickling out from behind the brickwork. A dank, musty odor filled my nostrils, making me wrinkle my nose in distaste. But despite the dampness, I saw a potential man cave, a place to escape when the renovations got to be too much. The promise of a pool table and a beer fridge flashed through my mind as I took in the open space and low ceiling, maybe even a gaming setup or two. With some work, this could be the perfect hideaway. It started innocently enough. I'd go down to the basement and find my tools shifted around. A hammer here or a screwdriver there. I blamed my forgetfulness, stress perhaps, from managing the renovation project. It was not until one day when I noticed a chill in the air that something began to feel off. The temperature seemed to drop drastically as soon as I opened the door at the top of the stairs. Even though it was summer outside, an icy draft swept through the room like an unwelcome guest. The scratchy cobwebs that covered every corner swayed gently in its wake, and I shivered involuntarily. It didn't make any sense. The windows were sealed shut. There was no way for cold air to enter the room. Yet when I passed by one of them, I could feel a distinct gust of wind on my face. Puzzled, I searched for all possible entry points, but found nothing suspicious other than a small crack along the wall that seemed too small to account for such a strong draft. The mystery only deepened as time went on and strange things started happening in the basement. Loud bangs late at night, and items being moved around without explanation, until eventually it became clear that something strange was at play down there in my home's dark depths. With each passing day, it seemed more likely that my house held secrets, far beyond anything I'd expected it to hold when I first stepped foot inside it months ago. One afternoon, I was kneeling on the cold cement floor of the basement, brush in hand, painting the bottom half of a wall. A chill ran down my spine, reverberating across my skin. I stood up and looked around the room, searching for the source of the draft. My gaze swept over to the irregularity in the wall. The small crack had grown wider. I reached out, running my fingertips along its edges. The area felt hollow beneath my touch. Excitement stirred within me, and I grabbed a nearby wrench to pry loose the brickwork from its home. After several attempts, a single brick fell into my hands like a stone from a riverbed. I peered inside and discovered an old leather-bound book nested within. As I turned each tattered page, my skin prickled with unease. It was a journal dating back centuries to the 1600s. When the house had an owner who, consumed by his ardent zeal for punishing witchcraft, wrote of tortuous trials and executions of accused witches. Even worse, he mentioned burying their corpses in his backyard as a reminder to others of the consequences of practicing sorcery. From then on, a perpetual darkness hung in the misty cellar. Stealthy movements would flutter across my vision, while ghostly voices murmured secrets in the middle of the night. A series of names reverberated through every wall. Bridget, Abigail, Rowena. I could feel their emotions passing through me. These were the women whose lives had been ended before their time in brutal and relentless ways. Sleep became a phantom, elusive and mocking. I felt a consuming need to unearth the horrific past of the house. Drowning in old records, yellowed newspaper clippings, and crumbling town maps, I stumbled upon a horrifying confirmation of the revelation I refused to believe. My basement, my sanctuary, was built atop an unmarked witch's graveyard. A chilling fear gripped me, mingled with an odd sense of obligation to these lost souls. Their stories had been snuffed out, their existence erased. I thought perhaps they yearned for their voices to be heard, their truths to be told. Possessed by a dark determination, I transformed the basement. No longer a den of warmth and relaxation, it became a grotesque shrine. I displayed the journal, the maps, the chilling histories I had unearthed, creating a macabre testament to the women buried underneath my home. My hands shook as I hung the last portrait in place. It was a painting of a woman, her face lined with years of pain and sorrow. She stared out at me with an empty, hollow gaze, her eyes seeming to penetrate my very soul. I shuddered and stepped back, surveying the room with a heavy heart. The basement had been transformed into something sinister yet captivating. Mementos to those whose lives were taken too soon lined the walls, and snippets of those same lives were recalled in the journal and maps I had found. I felt deeply connected to these forgotten souls that now inhabited my home. With each piece of evidence, small stories began to emerge, tales of superstition and heartache that had been buried beneath the surface for centuries. My heart ached for their fate. They'd been persecuted and forgotten in time's unwavering march forward. As I gazed around at what I had created, I felt a strange sense of catharsis wash over me. In this basement, these women's memories would remain alive forevermore. Their stories, preserved by me, finally allowed to see the light once again after so many years hidden away in darkness. I felt like this would give them peace. But the shadows didn't recede as I'd hoped. Instead, they seemed to swell, stretching and thickening in response to the sacrifice. The whispers grew into loud cries, reverberating off the ancient walls. The chill of death crept deeper into the room, a physical manifestation of their agony. A deep dread tore through me. I hadn't silenced them. I had given them a new form of power. The basement became a place of pure malevolence, as if all the negative energy in the world had converged into one powerful point. I could sense their rage radiating through the walls, each oppressive pulse demanding justice for centuries of abuse. The phantoms inhabiting my house were not silent observers, but vengeful spirits seeking retribution. My stomach lurched as I realized the magnitude of my mistake. In my naive attempt to reveal the truth, I had opened the gates to a horrific past, allowing the horrors of history to seep into the present, staining it with its grotesque colors. Beneath my feet, the victims of the past were no longer dormant. They were awake, and they were angry. I lived in an endless state of terror, assaulted by reminders of my home's sinister past. It no longer served as a shelter, instead becoming a grim reminder of horror and inhumanity that ravaged through these lands like a plague. Little by little, their insatiable need for revenge began to manifest in many ways I hadn't expected. Sounds too terrible to describe echoed through the walls. Furniture was upturned in an inexplicable fury. Shadows seemed to dance of their own accord, and dark figures lingered just out of sight. The presence only grew stronger over time, an ever-present reminder of how truth can become twisted into something evil if left unchecked. No matter how hard I tried to escape its grip and understand what happened here centuries before me, who these forgotten souls had been or why they'd been persecuted, nothing could undo what had already been done. All I could do now was make sure that their story wasn't forgotten again, that justice would never be denied them again. In times like ours where violence and prejudice still reign supreme. So here I am now, grappling with a force far more potent than any lone soul should be expected to face. Yet I feel an understanding buried deep within me that acknowledging the spectral inheritance might be one of the most profound acts of bravery one can perform. I returned to the task of research to try and get to the bottom of this once and for all. In the musty archives of my town's local library, I stumbled upon the chilling revelation that shook me to the core. A tattered genealogical record bore my family name, a name shared by the zealous church official who had damned and interred those accused of witchcraft. My heart pounded in my chest as I traced the lineage, the lines of descent like the tangled roots of an ancient tree, leading inexorably to me. He was my ancestor, a dark patriarch whose fervor for hunting witchcraft birthed a haunted legacy I had unknowingly inherited. His blood, carrying the echo of his misdeeds, pulsed through my veins, the specter of his actions stretching across the centuries to engulf me in its chilling grasp. I was not simply a hapless homeowner ensnared in the spectral repercussions of history, but the direct descendant of the architect of this horror. My futile task was doomed to fail from the beginning, because I wasn't only supposed to quell the restless spirits, but also seek atonement for the sins of my forefather. I had awoken something ancient and malevolent from its slumber, something so powerful and vengeful it could not be contained. The truth, I realized, is not always a panacea. Sometimes it's a Pandora's box, and once opened, it cannot be closed again. And I, trapped in this nightmare of my own making, was paying the price, right here, underneath us all.